Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. 67 million people watched the debate this week between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Were you one of them? Who do you believe won the debate? If you're undecided about who you will vote for, did the debate help you with your choice? Did the candidates say or do anything that made you change your mind about who you will support? Lots of questions and a great discussion ahead with the Another View Roundtable. Stay tuned. Another View is next, right after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Okay, the party has already started in this studio. I'm just going to tell you all right now. But from social media memes to cable news analysis to newspaper articles, local and national broadcast news coverage to radio talk shows, yep, even Another View. Everyone is talking about the debate this week between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Now, there are a lot of perspectives. You'll hear more today. But you, if you're a voter, and hopefully you are the final arbiter, the American voter. The ultimate question for you, did the debate matter? Here with some thoughts are two of our beloved roundtable pundits. Dr. Alvian Lyons is a nationally recognized speaker, relationship expert, and leadership consultant. And you can find out more about her at alvianlyons.com. Hello, my dear. How are you?
Guys.
We've missed you.
I've missed both of you guys.
Absolutely.
I've missed my sisters. It's such a beautiful space that we get to share.
Yes, so we are so happy that you are here with us today. And she's a career politician and educator and treasurer of the city of Norfolk. Her name is Dawn Hester. Hey, Dawn.
Hey, everybody.
So glad you guys are here.
Ready.
Are we ready? Okay, so who won the debate and why? Go ahead, Alvin. We'll start with you.
Well, let's be honest. Okay, so it depends what metric we use. And when I say that, I'm saying if your goal was entertainment, then Donald Trump won. Because, I mean, we're eating cats and pets. And, that if that was your goal for watching the debate and you wanted something to really laugh out loud about, then you got that from him, right? Mm-hmm. But if your goal was to see what presidential looked like, felt like, and sounded like, then it is a decisive win for our vice president, Kamala Harris. So it's really the winner and loser depends what metric you are using for your assessment.
Okay, Dawn.
The doc is so good. Excuse me. Kamala won it.
Okay. And why?
Because she has policies. She has a vision. She understands the majority of the people who live in this country and how we're trying to take care of our families, what it takes in working your way up to get through. Mm-hmm. And she has laid out a plan and process for us, and she articulated that very well. She understands the country. She understands foreign policy. She understands what it takes to do the job. And so the humor person is the humor person. But you really need someone who understands policy and how to get things done and how to get bills and legislation passed. And she articulated all of that.
So I will tell you that when the debate first started, the very first question was, "Are you better off today than 4 years ago?"
And she did not answer
She
that
didn't
And
question.
she did not answer the question, and
Right.
it made me so nervous because I was like, "Oh no!" Later on, she settled in, and but I want to know your response to why you think it was so important for her to go stump speech as opposed to answering the question. Dawn, let's start with you.
Well, I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna say it first. This is the one who's done it.
Right, that's why
You
I'm
gotta
asking
get your
you.
nerves together, and you have a message that you do want to get out, and you can come back and answer the question, which she did. But she had a message that she wanted to start with to the people to present, and that's what she did. But all of us who were tweeting and texting and watching, like, she missed that all
Right.
together. And then it was like, okay, she'll get it, but you do have to calm yourselves. And then, the other thing I said was to myself, I'm saying it out loud for the first time. I don't know if I should say it this way, but anyway, it was her first time meeting her opponent. And you have to settle in on that too, because I can't imagine what it would be like to meet the orange guy. And just, for the first time, and then having to debate him as well.
That is a very good
You
point.
know?
But I'm going to get your perspective because it'll lead to my next question, which I know you're going to handle, Miss Albion, because I know you. But
So
what did you think?
I have an
when she
interesting
didn't?
perspective, perhaps, about it all strategically, and I think that will come out as we have this exchange. But I think that perhaps it was not just that she had nerves, but I think strategically they've decided that I don't have to play by traditional rules, because with this guy, traditional rules don't apply anyway.
You're right.
So why do I have to color inside the lines when he colors completely outside of the lines with no coloring in the lines?
Except that she was talking to the audience. She had to also remember her audience. Is that not correct? And I mean,
And even with that being true, though, we all know that much of the vote at this point is fixed.
Correct.
Much of the vote, right? So there's a very small margin of individuals that you're ultimately going to be speaking to or can sway. But because we have such a tight race, that small margin is extremely important, right? So you want to use every moment that you have to communicate the message you want to communicate to that teeny margin. And if the question is not going to help you get to what that goal is, then who cares what the question is? Because you have one mission inside of this. And if that is 50 more people that decide a county in order to change the electorate, then so be it. So I'm not saying that she wasn't nervous. I'm just saying that in much of how this is unfolding, I think there's more strategy at play than sometimes we're giving the campaign credit for. Because I certainly know that if they had called me to ask, what do you think? I would tell them, forget all the stuff that you used to do, because you're not dealing with a candidate that you can use those same applications. You're going to have to look at what is the landscape you're navigating right now. And every minute you have to define yourself for that margin, you take that minute. And I don't care what they asked you. They could have asked you about pink sneakers, and you talk about women's rights. So there may be more angles at play inside of this than perhaps we are thinking, because she's navigating a space in such a small period of time.
do you guys think that because our elections are so scripted, I'll use that as the terminology, that everyday Joe, the American folks, are they really looking for someone to be honest with them and tell them the truth? Or are they looking for, hit me with everything that you're going to do so that I can then make a decision? Do you see the difference in the nuance of what I'm saying?
And I think that again affirms why Trump's his voting block is so fixed, is because it's not so much about policy. If people like to pretend that it is, but it's not so much about policy as much as it is the fundamental belief that that's my guy. And if you believe that the person that you are voting for best represents who you are. As much as other folks like to say that I like his policy, I don't like the person. I like his policy, I don't like the person. A lot of that is not really true. The truth is that you feel like that person gets you, and you trust that person to be able to move what matters to you in the direction that you want it to go. And so if that be the case, the reality is that a lot of this is not about what we think it is. I tell candidates all the time that elections are not won from the shoulders up. They're won from the shoulders down. How do people feel
it's an emotional
about
thing.
you?
It's a heart thing.
And it becomes more of a popularity contest, unfortunately, than it is about is your stuff, is your policy exactly what I need it to be? It's less about that anymore, because when you look at who America has chosen, we all know if we were choosing based on intellectual capability, if we were choosing based on political prowess, if we were choosing based on the stuff that's actually going to change our America, 90% of who is leading our country right now would not be leading our country. The reason they're leading our country is because we make choices based on emotions far less than cerebral information. So while we think that we're doing such a great job in, tell them the 12 things that you're going to do, the reality is if I don't like you, I don't care about the 12 things that you're getting ready to do. And what I think is being realized from a Democratic perspective is that we have to come at this from a different angle in order to be able to navigate an electorate that is making decisions not based on the things that we thought they were making decisions on. They're making different kinds of decisions.
So, Dawn, you've been in these rooms where you're, for your own campaign, for other campaigns, where you're trying to decide, what is the messaging? How are we going to do this? What's the conversation that's going on?
One, who's your audience? How are you going to get them to the polls? What is it going to take? And it usually takes people knowing you that gets you to the polls.
Yeah.
And so that is why the sprint that our vice president is on is to get people to know her. Because nobody's going to ever agree with all of the same policies that you put out, no matter what they are, no matter what side. So it is, what do people want to hear? What do people need to hear to know that I am going to work for them, whether they like it or not, but they know that I am going to work for them. That goes back to your original of he's my guy, she's my gal. And it's all about that. And so, but a big part of that is how we have gotten to this point. And so over the years, we as people have changed. How we think, how we process, how we gather our information. All of that has changed. And so now you have both parties trying to keep up with what is going to make sure my people come out and vote and I get the most votes. And then you have the other part that is, I want the world to continue and to be better. Or I want to put somebody in this office who has said, and I'm trying not to be political, that he won't ever leave it. So what do you want? So right now, in my mind, it's really not about policies. If you don't know the vice president, it's about, what do you want the country to look like? And do you want to be able to participate in it? Because even the people who support my guy will be hurt by his policies as they are drafted, even though he doesn't say that they're his policies. But the people who wrote those policies are going to be the ones who are going to be leading, because he'll just be doing and saying what he's doing and saying now. People eat cats.
So, and we're going to talk about the cats in a minute. But I have been dying to ask our humanist over here, our behavior relationship expert, about the body language. And I just want your reaction on both sides. The body language. What did you see? Let's start with the handshake and work our way through.
So what I saw was, and let me say this just as And it's going to sound mildly unpopular for some when I started, okay? So I want y'all to know, honestly, I was not a huge Kamala fan, okay? So just honestly, I was not. And I'm one of those people that I don't vote based on culture. I don't vote based on gender. I don't vote. I need to know that I trust that you're the best representation for what we are trying to get accomplished, city, state, government, nationally, okay? So know that as a backdrop. So I wasn't one of those who are already sold out from the beginning because she's a woman of color. Candace Owens is a woman of color. I don't make my decisions like that, okay? I need to know the content of who you are in order for you to earn my vote. So I was very interested in watching how this was going to unfold. Very interested. And so when she stepped out onto that stage, I was one of those people that, we wanted to see what was going to happen because we were waiting for this moment. This was going to be a very defining moment for her. And we'll talk about why it was so defining in a lot of ways, okay? But when she stepped out on that stage, it was already debated whether or not she was going to shake hands with him because from a physical stature perspective, you are also looking at the fact that she's 5'4" and he's, as he says, 6'3". Okay, so you're physically significantly smaller than this man, which could present the psychology that she's weaker because she's physically smaller. So there are some that were not in favor of them standing too close together to make that obvious, or for her to walk up on him to make that more obvious. What I loved is that's exactly what she did. Because what she communicated in doing so, because he was not intending to shake her hand, which was what that awkward moment was. But what I love is that it was the equivalent of David going to Goliath to say, I am not afraid of you. So when she says that I have put gang lords in jail, I have prosecuted murderers, I have prosecuted sex offenders and human traffickers, know that I'm afraid of nothing. That moment was almost the affirmation physically of what she had been communicating verbally. I don't care how big he is. And better yet, if you listened, she said, as if he does not know who she is already.
Yeah, I'm
Kamala Harris.
Right. Exactly. She introduced herself.
Let me introduce myself. Okay. So she put some Larry seasoning on what she was doing inside of that moment. Make no mistake. Okay. So then, from there, she chose over and over again to look directly at him. He did not make eye contact with her. So she was not, her comfort was not the camera. Her comfort, even though she spoke to the American people over and over again, she wanted to be clear that everything I'm saying to you, it's the say it to my face. If you're really courageous, say it to my face. And the difference between somebody who's courageous is they'll look you in your eye and say the thing that they have issue with or what they're purporting, versus someone who has to look at someone else as they talk about you. So he did not make eye contact with her almost the entire time. Every time he responded looking at the correspondence. He did not look at her. So there was multiple levels. He scowled the entire time. We can get into how quickly he was off balance and for what reason that was the case. But she wanted to make very clear that I may be 5'4" on the outside, but I'm 7 feet tall on the inside.
So was there anything that either one of you liked about the former president and his presentation during the debate, Dawn?
I'm prejudiced, so the answer is no.
You just say it straight out. Okay.
I am. I do. I have paid attention. I know my facts and figures. I know what's a lie and what's not. And no, there was nothing about him. There will never be anything about him that would be impressive to me.
Okay. All right.
So,
Alvin.
I'm sorry. I'm kind of straight.
Hey, that's okay. I love it. Straight, no chaser.
Yeah, none.
I find him profoundly entertaining. I find him profoundly entertaining. It's just that I really want that to be on reality television and not in my White House, right? So and I don't think that he's all bad in any way. I just think that he is not who America needs. And so I was totally tickled, and I totally acknowledge that I have boy humor. I was completely tickled by the Run Spot Run. I'm sorry, I laughed out loud. When he described the economic policy as 4 sentences like Run Spot Run, I chuckled.
Did say that.
Okay, like I chuckled. So whether I agree with you or not doesn't mean I can't find the humor in what you say and what you do. And I was tickled when he unraveled into they're eating cats and they're eating your dogs and they're eating. So what I appreciate about him is he's always himself. What he is not is fraudulent in the sincerity to his identity.
Let me play the clip of the eating cats and dogs for us to continue on that. Go ahead.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I'm sorry.
Even the VP laughed.
And she laughed.
Even the VP
and she
laughed.
said, "Wow, that's extreme." and even her response, her ability to find humor in his moment of seriousness. You all need to. He was Chicken Little. The sky is falling, and you all need to be worried. And the fact that she laughed was almost like laughing in the face of the fear you want me to have, the fear that you are spreading, it's bouncing off of me as if it were nothing, which is even more frustrating. It's kind of like we women, if we're upset with our partners, 2 things you never do. Never hang up on us on the telephone because we are driving our car to wherever you are, okay? And don't ignore us, right? Because both of those 2 things it almost seeks to make you smaller, right? The fact that she is able to laugh in the presence of those kinds of things speak to how big she sees herself as in the presence of that.
Her utilizing things also that she knew got under his skin.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so let me just play 1 or 2 of those things. Let's talk about the rally attendance.
Why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back.
The hyperbole.
And
everything is always the biggest
Trump,
superlative.
Yeah, and an opinion is a fact. Any opinion he holds is a fact inside of that moment, which is very typical for a clinical narcissist.
Okay, and that's, I guess, why I just said no. I find nothing, because when you know that he is challenged mentally. But you also know that he and others have convinced half of this country that he could be the leader of this country. That is frightening to me. And so that's why
she said,
you find it humorous. I find it frightening. Yes, I do. Very dangerous. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you guys this because, and I'm purposely not going over every single gaffe or whatever because everybody and their brother has done that. But since our show focuses on the African American perspective, I want to ask you this question. So it's a complaint that we hear often in the Black community that Black politicians don't do enough specifically for the Black community. President Obama heard it over and over, especially when the marriage the ability for LGBTQ community to get married and so forth, marriage equality. So did Kamala, and he said that, good policy raises the boat for everybody. So that was his response. But do you believe that Vice President Harris said enough to persuade those Black people who, like you, Alvian, may at some point may still be hesitant about voting for her? Did she bring up anything? Was it important for her to reach specifically to our community?
Who would you like to answer that first?
I don't care. You go ahead. Because I'm looking at Dawn's face like, oh.
So there are a couple of things I'll say about that quickly. One, I think any person of color, most people of color who have reached certain levels of leadership that is a multicultural level of leadership understand that we have to be very careful about signaling that our agenda is a colored-centered agenda. The biggest fear that our European counterpart has is the sense that we are in it for us when we are in power. And worse yet, the fear that we will use that power in some way that would be harmful to them. And if that is your fundamental fear, and you have the opportunity, if that is the fundamental fear and you have the opportunity to lead, then you also know that you have a responsibility to those who you lead to make sure that they know that they're included at the table. So what you say and what you don't say both sends a message. I think that President Obama understood fundamentally what was going to be necessary, and he could not say that I'm going to do this for this reason, or signal to the communities of color that I am your president without being everyone's president. Because he's right. If you make great policy, your policy, when you made it, you were thinking about your communities, but you are not communicating that as to isolate other communities. You don't have to talk about all the great things you're going to do for someone to still be able to do them. So, but your record will speak louder than any stump speech that you're going to provide. I think she's smart in not making this about race, because who she needs to win is not that demographic. She is winning hand over fist in communities of color. She is winning with white women. But we cannot afford to isolate white men and every other demographic when that's the component of the
that
voter
little
base.
beat that you were
That's
talking
that
about.
percentage. And if she's focused, she's going to pay attention to the thing that's going to move the needle.
Dawn, hang on one second. I'm going to come to you just a moment. But if you're just joining us, we're talking about the outcomes of the presidential candidates debate with relationship expert and leadership consultant Alvian Lyons and Norfolk City Treasurer Dawn Hester. So, Dawn, I mean, you've been in office. You've run to represent everyone, but that is a fine line to walk. And
I don't know why we as a people put that burden on our elected officials.
Amen.
And that, it's not even just our elected officials. Anyone who has a position of leadership or power in our community.
Well,
Absolutely.
You are right.
Absolutely.
And so we have to stop doing that, one, as a body. But that goes back to that we're still trying to move forward, and we're still getting stopped at certain spaces and trying to break the ceiling, so to speak. Because my conversation, some of them have been, if you were listening to the debate, what would make you pick the one who made sense? So if she had been a white man, her conversation the same, would that make you go, oh, he would be a good one? White woman, she would be a good one. Black woman, maybe. I still want to know more about her policy. What about your life and living and what you're already experiencing? You can't base that on her color. But if you could not see and you listen to those two, who would you want to be the one to represent you anywhere in the world and here at home? So, and one thing we don't do, even as leaders, as well as we should, is to teach how things get done. So even in the Biden-Harris administration, with the microchips, with bringing that business opportunity back here, with improving our bridges and building our bridges and all the infrastructure money that's out here, that's people who going to work making more money than they've made in a long time because there are restrictions on federal money. Mm-hmm. So we know that households could be, not all, but most, have increased their wealth. What they've done with their wealth, that's up to them. But this administration has done improvements that impact all races, peoples, creeds, colors.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's just so interesting to think about also her prowess and knowledge of world affairs too. Okay, so I want to play one other clip, and that is the one on Ukraine.
And we have a president that we don't even know if where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here.
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president, you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans.
And then she goes on to explain from there. Her ability also to remind people of who's running was important in that moment.
Yeah, and I'll say that I've had multiple conversations. One of my business partners and I were having discussions, and some of you guys know that I, own portions of various businesses, and just for the record, all of my business partners are white men. Okay, with the exception of one of my primary company, and they all have different political perspectives. So we have a very good time being really honest about all kinds of things, right? So I called one of them last night, and his homework was to watch the debate, and he's very politically independent, so I wanted to hear what his feedback was from it. And one of the things that he said, and he was very clear about the fact that there's no question for him that she was, more presidential than her counterpart. But he is a really good judge of sincerity. That's one of the things that's really good about his personality. And he's like, the problem that I have is they're fake in different ways. And I thought that was interesting, but it's not the first time I've heard that. And admittedly, part of my hesitance originally where she was concerned is I didn't feel like I knew her, not her policies. I didn't feel like I knew her as a woman. And that didn't mean that I felt like I knew him. I'm just talking about just her personally. And I wanted to, and I felt like she was doing what many of us women of color have to do. And to be so measured and so precise about so many things that unintentionally what can happen is that people don't feel like they know us because we're being so careful about what we're saying,
that we don't let the true us come out.
Don't let the true us come out. But part of the reason we don't let the true us come out is because if we were passionate about what we really are passionate about, we're seen as the angry black woman. If we're honest about the thing we're honest about, we're seen as being unkind or aggressive. Our sincerity sometimes is not palatable in certain environments, so we measure how much of us can show up. And when you do that, the thing that can happen, if not done well, is that people don't feel like they know you. And so when you hear her lifelong friends, because to be honest, the thing that really made me start to shift was listening to her lifelong friends at the Democratic convention. Listening to people who have loved you for 30 years talk about who you've been as a person. That's the thing. When you don't have lifelong friends, something's wrong.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
Something is wrong. And so at the end of the day, we find ourselves navigating the way in which we release who we are to the world and how much of us we can release. And so I think one of the things that has been true with her throughout the campaign is, one, how measured she's had to be as the first woman of color in the position of power at this level in our nation, following after President Obama, who could not have burped without it being a national scandal.
No beige
So
suit.
he literally,
That's right, beige suits.
a
You're right.
tan suit
Yeah.
was a national emergency, according to Fox News. Okay? So when we're talking about the level of perfection that people of color at the highest levels of power find themselves having to navigate, it's like doing backflips on a tight wire. And when you try to do that, sometimes you have to shrink yourself or narrow yourself so much to be able to stay on line that it makes people feel like they don't know you yet.
And you have to flip back and forth
Mm-hmm.
between your world and friends of comfort
Mm-hmm.
and the person that people expect to see when you are representing them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am measured sometime when I have to be, depending on what I'm doing. And she has to be measured right now
In lots of ways.
because
Go ahead.
she still wants people to understand that she can do the job. This is about doing the job. And, you know, she's measured, she's fake, I don't think she's either of that.
Mm-hmm.
She's just trying to help you see that I can do the job. Pick me because it's just like we go into an interview, y'all. Excuse me, I'm breaking on down there. You know, I'm going in for a job. White guy and me, depending on who's in the room, is who comes out with the job. Because if I don't have anybody in that room that looks like me or is going to speak up for me, Regina Williams would have never had her job here in Norfolk if I had not been in that room. So I'm just
Regina
saying.
Williams, who was the former
city manager.
Yeah.
Right. Because you know, so it's a space that we're trying to enter that we have never entered before. And it's uncharted. And so how the organization is rolling her out and she's trying to be herself. You know, the things that make me pleased with her the most is when I see her cooking for her family on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Or
Okay?
dancing at a cookout.
Or dance, right. You know, that's who she is.
Right.
Now, we're
Except
all...
that sometimes when people dance at a cookout, that's not presidential.
And
Right.
that was a whole thing too.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, I'm with my family.
Exactly.
Leave me alone.
Alvin, I want you to explain because I can feel it. There are people in the audience right now who are not people of color who are saying, well, we have to be measured when we're in. What's the difference? What is the difference?
Well, the difference is that, and we've watched this in media for decades. Our current media, and quite frankly, I have to give credit to the thing that I dislike the most, and that's reality television in lots of ways, and certainly social media, but I understand that it's a vehicle that we all now have to figure out how to navigate effectively, right? But we were not afforded the ability to be multidimensional human beings, right? Where our European counterparts could be whole people, right? They could have the full breadth and range of emotion without it being interpreted through a lens that made things that are completely human and normal into something that was considered derogatory in some way, or to demonize the emotion. Like, we weren't allowed to be all of those things. We were only allowed to have one or two emotions. And generally it was either joy or sadness. But rage was problematic because it was seen as animalistic. So when they used criminal images, it was often a person of color who played the criminal in things, right? Because dark was scary, right? So We saw that even with our Native American brothers and sisters. When you look at black and white movies, the Indians were always the evil people because the dark skin made them scary because they were native, right? So we make them primal and animalistic. We have a history in America that only allowed for that full array of humanness to be represented by our European brothers and sisters. So when that has been inbred into the psyche of who we are, the collective consciousness or unconsciousness, many of us who have learned to be successful in spaces that are not homogenous, as in they're not all black spaces, quite frankly, many of us are in all white spaces, our success has been in our ability to measure how much of us can show up in this space and be fully accepted. And when you figure that out, it's kind of the Oprah effect. And that's when you run into the next thing that happens is the exceptionalism. And that is when
you're not like those other black
you're
people.
not them, right?
Exactly.
So they take you out of your culture, and there's an honesty and freedom that they can speak when you're around that they don't speak when some of your colleagues are present in the room, because you're almost honorary one of us. And in that space, that becomes our responsibility as people who have access to the axis of power to be able to use that to move the needle for those who don't have access. And that doesn't mean against anyone. It just means for everyone. So we have to understand that there's a mantle that we carry when we have the opportunity to sit at the table. And that mantle sometimes means that we don't have the luxury of being three-dimensional. Sometimes we have to be the one dimension that is effective inside of that space. And what comes with that in electorates and candidacies is that how do you do that and still let people feel like they know you? And that's not always a very easy thing to navigate.
I'm so glad you're here today.
Well, and I want to play one other clip, the clip of the race clip, because it shows also how you have to rise above.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking...
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race.
She put out? That was the first thing.
She put out. I'm like, she put out what? Did she put out she was black? Or did what?
She came out of the closet. She came out of the closet. Apparently, she was in the closet culturally. And
but then the thing that got me was that he said, "I read." We know he don't read. I read.
But I mean, I think David Muir asked a really good question, because if you're talking about being the president of the United States of America, that means everybody, as they say.
But the thing that's what it speaks to is his cultural blindness or ignorance, and that there's so few of us as people of color that are only one culture or only one ethnicity. Right. So many of us have multiple cultures that are part of our genealogy. You know, that it's clearly you have a very narrow knowledge base of culture, and your space is clearly homogenous, because all the rest of us in America know that you can be 3 things, you can be 12 things, you can be as many things, and you're allowed to enjoy and celebrate each of those ethnicities and identities, and that is what makes America great. You want to make America great again? How about we make it really great right now? Right now, okay? I think we have a wonderful country. All I'm saying is that I don't think we have to go back in order to be able to achieve its greatness. I think our best days are ahead of us. So, I'm just saying we could be great right now if we could just all show up in this room and we can all respect and appreciate each other, and we could have an argument about policy and not personhood.
From your lips, right?
But we're gonna keep striving
but
for
we,
it.
and
striving.
we
must.
We have to keep going for it. So I'm not going to. There's so many other topics we were going to get to, but I do want to talk about James Earl Jones.
It's almost over.
And Frankie Beverly. Yes, because we have 11 minutes. We have 11 minutes left. Exactly. So.
Oh, we didn't. We didn't invite the callers in either.
No, we did not, because we were all
There's
holding
so much to talk about, right?
So much, exactly. But I do want to talk about James Earl Jones. First, we have 7 minutes. Lisa just told me in my ear. Who just passed?
He did
this week. Movies, TV,
most
films.
recognized voice in America.
Who we almost didn't get a chance to have that in our lives.
And you should share what you've learned about him, because a lot of people don't know.
Okay, so when he was young, unfortunately, both of his parents abandoned him. Father left first, then the mother left. He was raised by a grandmother who was Native American and Black, and as he says, the words from his books and so forth, that she was probably the most racist person that he had ever met in his life. She felt that all white people were responsible for slavery, and all black people were responsible for allowing them to be slaves. Yep. Yeah, so we let them do that to us. Was her thing, and he was listening to that, the abandonment, the being alone, all of that. He stopped talking, and he stopped talking for years. Plus, he developed a stutter because of the stress of everything that he was under, and then he stopped talking. And it was not until he got to high school that a high school teacher helped him through poetry, because he recognized that he was good at poetry, where he would write his poem and he would have him come and stand in front of the class to read his poems. And that's where that voice came from. And I mean, can you imagine what a loss our country would have had he not been able to free himself?
Take a moment?
Had he not had that teacher.
And had he not had that teacher.
That's
right.
I was literally going to say, can we take a moment to say that we cannot survive without good educators?
It's the truth.
Correct.
Educators release the gift in our children, and we don't give that enough credit sometimes. So to all our educators who are listening, and the children and spouses, partners and friends of educators, we cannot do this without you all. You should be paid 10 times what you are paid, because you are the creators and the nurturers of the gifts that make America great.
And I want to also talk about, we got 5 minutes left, Frankie Beverly. For those of you who are in our audience who are not African American, let me tell you who Frankie Beverly is, because his music, unfortunately, did not cross over. But Albion and Dawn, what events in the Black community was Frankie Beverly's music always there?
All of them.
Exactly. I was going to say,
where music
you will
is
get
played.
your black card removed
if
it's not played.
As a matter of fact, I would love to play one of his songs.
Suddenly the things you see got you hurt so bad, so bad. How come the things that make us happy make us sad? Seem to me joy and pain
Joy and Pain. I mean, every time Frankie Beverly's songs will come on, everybody starts dancing. It doesn't matter. Every
groove.
age, everybody's going to groove. He was from Philadelphia, moved to San Francisco. His music was kind of a combination of the two coasts, and his music never crossed over, which I was really surprised of, because I thought everybody knew who Frankie Beverly was.
He's a good man. He's a good man. I saw every concert that was on the East Coast, well, this close that I could get to, just because. And, the songs were the same, but it was just such a great atmosphere, a great vibe, a great space to be in. I had the opportunity to meet him up close on a Tom Joyner cruise. He was on the cruise. It was just marvelous.
For 15 years, he was the final act of the Essence Music Festival every year. Wow. For 15 years in a row. And the whole crowd would just vibe. I mean...
I miss music like that. I mean, obviously, I was very, very young. When that was.
What you trying to say? What you trying to say? But it's okay.
It's considered old school.
You got it.
But I miss, even my kids love old school music because of the richness of the lyrics and the feeling. Nobody was shooting. Nobody was getting into fights. Nobody was cussing. It didn't matter if the babies were running around. It was the kind of music that was good for the whole family. Exactly. And I mean, when music is good for your soul, that's the kind of music that I wish this generation was intentionally recreating in their own ways, but that was music that healed. Instead of the music that we find that's hurting.
All right, we have less than 2 minutes. I want each of you to give a reason why, if you haven't registered to vote, you must. Alvian.
Because your presence in America requires that you participate in your America. This is your America. So do not leave this earth, do not leave this space without having left the tattoo of your voice on it. And your vote is your voice.
Dawn.
Because you want to make a difference, and you want to pick a person that you believe will make a difference for you. And you do that by voting in every election.
I was going to say, and that's a really important point, because we get all hyped up during the presidential
but the
cycle.
Local elections actually affect you more.
Exactly.
Right?
They're right there.
And here we got school board and city council.
Yep.
Locally, that people on the ballot. You got to go all the way up and down. You have to pay attention, do your homework.
Pay attention, do your homework. And we're going to do a show on voting coming up because we really want people to be educated.
Early voting
and to
starts
get there.
September 20th.
September 20th. I was just getting ready to say that.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, ladies, thank you so much. As always, I'm going to get out a little bit early because I want to be able to play some more Frankie Beverly before we go. But thank you, audience, for the pleasure of your company this hour. You can listen to this show again or any of our Another View programs at anotherviewradio.org, Spotify, or anywhere you go for your podcast listening pleasure. As a reminder, early in-person voting starts on September 20th in Virginia and October 17th in North Carolina. Are you registered to vote? Do you have questions? In Virginia, go to elections.virginia.gov for more information. In North Carolina, you can get your questions answered at ncsbe.gov. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer. And Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. We leave you this afternoon with the soulful sounds of music phenom Frankie Beverly. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. And we'll get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
I can't let you go. Oh, I know. Keep it down. Come on, y'all.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.